Chapter 2. The only feather-bed guests who were comfortable with me were the gnomes. They never stared, never seemed even to notice my appearance. Gnomes upset the inn's routine. Atim, our cook, had to prepare root vegetable stews for them, the only human foods gnomes can eat, but father was glad to have them anyway. Gnomes, at least the ones who traveled, were wealthy. They tipped generously and paid in advance. Better yet, they often paid double, because husbands and wives took separate rooms, since adult gnomes were too wide to share our beds. Mother always had me serve them and clean their rooms. One day I was polishing the chest of drawers in the crane chamber when its occupant returned. I was singing a cleaning song I'd made up and didn't hear him. He stood in the doorway as I sang. I'm not a sir but a serf, and my enemy's worse than a knight ever cursed. My foes are the dirt, the dust, the filth and decay. I brandish my mop, my rag, and my scouring pad. My enemies flee or they melt or they die. But they have friends and their friends have friends who have more friends. And whatever I try, the dirt never ends. Slime and grime, sludge and smudge, mud and crud, oh gooey guck and gluey muck. I'm not a sir, I'm a serf, and my enemy's worse than a knight ever cursed. The gnome, whose name was Zam, said, Oh my! I turned, startled, and he was waving his hands in the air, applauding the Aorthian way. My blotchy blush began, but his arms didn't come down. I smiled at him. He smiled back, showing teeth that resembled iron posts. I like your song. It is charming, to be exact, and your voice is more than charming. Zam was a frequent guest at the inn. Although we had never spoken to each other before, I thought of him as the Green Gentleman. Green, because of the emerald buttons on all his tunics. Gentleman, because he was polite and fussy, with a soft, breathy voice and small gestures. He had curly brown hair, small ears set close to his head, and skin almost as pale as my own. Shall I leave, Master Zam? I said. I can finish cleaning later. I hoped he'd say no. I had a question I'd long wished to ask a gnome if the opportunity arose. No need. I only want to think a moment. To be exact, I can do that as badly with you here as with you gone. He sat carefully on the bench by the fireplace. How nice he was. I worked slowly. I couldn't ask my question until he finished thinking. I was changing his pillowcase and deciding to scrub the washstand again when he stood up. There, he said, I am finished thinking. Perhaps for the month. Was he jesting? I smiled uneasily, holding his pillow by a corner. He nodded, reading my expression. Yes, it is a jest. Not so humorous, to be exact. I gathered my courage and said in a rush, Can you see what's to come? Some gnomes could. Hints, glimmers. We never see more. I didn't know if a hint or a glimmer would be specific enough. Would you be so kind? Would it be too much trouble? There's something you'd like to know? I blurted out, Will I ever be pretty? I hugged the pillow, protecting myself against his answer. Never. Oh. He must have seen my misery, because he added, All humans are ugly, to be exact. All humans? Yes. I was amazed. He went on, You are slightly less ugly than most. Your hair is a beautiful color. Ton. I've never seen a human with ton hair before. I wasn't listening. Will I ever be pretty to people? To humans? He stared over my left shoulder. I thought his expression changed. Although his face was so leathery and seemed so lizard-like, I wasn't sure. A minute passed. Maid Aza, that's your name. I nodded. In Gnomic, we would call you Maid Aza. He folded his hands across his chest, delivering a pronouncement. In the future, you and I will meet again. Even I could see far enough into the future to see that. He stayed at the feather bed once or twice every month. I smelled my home and saw glow iron. To be exact, we'll meet again in gnome caverns. You will be in danger." What sort of danger, and how could I get to gnome caverns? But I skipped to my main concern. Will I look as I do now? You will be smaller. Smaller would be a big improvement. Do your visions always come to pass? This will come to pass, unless you do something irregular at a crossroad. I didn't understand. There was one more change in you in my vision. Your hair was black, with little ton left. What's ton? Ton looks black to humans. It is the color I like best. Deeper than scarlet, more serene than cerulean, gayer than yellow. Your ton hair is the most beautiful I've ever seen. I stared down at the floor, trying not to cry. No one had ever said before that anything about me looked beautiful. If only humans could see ton. In the year of barn songs, when I was 12, the Duchess of Elixo and her companion, Dame Ethel, stopped at the featherbed for a night. Father and Mother were thrilled, but also worried. If the Duchess liked the inn, she could steer other rich customers to us. If she disliked it, she could get our license revoked by the king. I was thrilled and worried too. Thrilled because I'd never seen a duchess before, and worried because the Duchess had never seen me before. I'd stay out of the way, but if our paths crossed, would she hate the sight of me? I was serving dinner to a party of gnomes when she arrived, earlier than expected, or I would never have been in the tavern. Father conducted a small, plump woman and a large one to the best table. The large woman, who was approximately my own size, had more ribbons and bows on her gown than I'd ever seen collected together. The small one was as richly clad, but more simply. Neither of them glanced my way. I wondered which was the Duchess and which was the companion. It would have been rude to stare, as I knew better than anyone. I stole glances, however, and soon decided who was who. The large one was Dame Ethel, and the small plump one was the Duchess. How did I know? Well, the small woman's expression was petulant, but the big woman smiled. The smiley one had to be the companion. After all, who would pay to have a petulant companion? I was perplexed by the Duchess's petulance. What did she have to be petulant about? She was a duchess, and she didn't have a face that made dogs howl. The Duchess didn't like her dinner. A team had prepared her best dish, heart sautéed with spring onions and Aorthian fire peppers. Unfortunately, the Duchess detested peppers of every sort, and she expected everyone to know it. Mother apologized and brought out a double helping of chicken pot pie, but the damage was done. The Duchess's frown deepened. Before she left her table, she told Mother she wanted a mug of hot ostumo delivered to her chamber at 9 that night. "Not a second before 9, she said in a voice that carried, "nor yet a second after, but on the stroke itself, or I shall send it back. And it must be piping hot. Piping, or I shall send it back." After I finished waiting on the gnomes, I was sent to the stable to help another gnome find a belt buckle in one of his trunks. It was a prolonged business. The buckle, naturally, was in the third and final trunk. I returned to the kitchen while a team was preparing the ostumo, a mixture of grain and molasses that was Eortha's favorite beverage. She was so flustered by the Duchess that she scalded the first pot and had to throw it out. By 5 before 9 the second pot was ready. Mother poured it into a mug and placed the mug on a tray. A crash and a loud oath came from the tavern. Mother turned toward the tavern door. "Oh, I'd better—" She stopped and turned back to the piping hot mug. She looked appealingly at a team. "Not me, Mistress Ingy. I won't bring anything to that Duchess, and I'm no tavern wench." I wished I was still in the stable. I couldn't settle a tavern brawl, and the Duchess wouldn't want to see my face looming over her ostumo. We heard another crash and more swearing. There was no time to get Father or my brothers. "Aza!" Mother wet her finger and wiped a smudge off my cheek. She tucked a stray strand of hair into my bonnet. "Take the ostumo to the Duchess and come—" "I can't! I've no one else. Come right back and tell me what she says." She put the tray with the no longer piping hot ostumo into my hands. The clock began to strike 9. Hurry! Mother snatched up the broom and dustpan and marched into the tavern. I left the kitchen and started up the stairs, although I wanted to hide in the cellar. It will all be over in a moment, I told myself, and answered myself, yes, the Duchess will toss the ostumo in my face. Then she'll call for her carriage and leave. Emily was snoozing on the stairway landing. I scooped him up. I could hold him high so the Duchess would see less of me. She was in our best room, the peacock chamber. I knocked on the door.